Hello and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us.
This week, former Congressman Gregg Harper and Nathan Shrader, professor of politics and government at Millsaps College, will talk about congressional wrangling over infrastructure and social programs and more. Is America's top legislative body able to address the issues of a nation in need? Or will bickering within and between the parties bring President Joe Biden's agenda to a screeching halt?
Joining me now in studio are Nathan Shrader, and Director of the American Studies Program at Millsaps College, and Gregg Harper, former Congressman from Mississippi's 3rd District. Gentlemen, welcome back to Mississippi Insight.
Thanks so much, Byron. Great to be back.
It's good to have you.
Thanks for having us.
Democrats, they have now, are progressive, have stonewalled on this bill for dealing with infrastructure. They've been demanding a vote on the $3.5 trillion package to bolster the nation's social safety net. Are these House progressives, are they overplaying their hand, Nathan?
I think to some degree, but I think you have to break it down into two different compartments here. There's the actual policy compartment, then there's sort of the optics department. And I think on the one hand, they're trying to do the best they can to advance or to keep alive the piece of the Joe Biden agenda that they want to enact the most, which is that social infrastructure piece, right? But at the same time, I think if the physical infrastructure legislation, the bipartisan bill, fails as a result of the progressive actions, they're going to be the ones to shoulder the blame for this among the public.
Congressman? And Byron, look, this is, they've been in a mess lately trying to get through things, work things out. So whose fault is it going to be if there's failure on anything significant like that? Is it going to be the president's? Is it going to be Democratic-controlled House or Senate, or a subgroup being the progressives or whoever else it may be? At this point in time, it's not a fun place to be in. When we were in the majority, there were always those indigestion type votes where you're trying to get everybody on board and do that. To Nancy Pelosi's credit, she's as good at forcing a vote as anybody, so it remains to be seen where they go. They took care of the first thing they had to do, which was to make sure that there was funding for the government and a continuing resolution that'll take them through December 3rd. But that left open because they couldn't do this infrastructure bill. That left the surface transportation, departments of transportation, unable to continue as of midnight last night. They have a bill that's going to go through, I think, pretty easily that will extend that for a period of time, a month. And then so they'll deal with the bigger picture as they go forward.
Talking about leaving the government open for the next couple of months, why is it that we're constantly having to deal with the debt ceiling or the government being shut down? Why is that always a problem that we come up with, no matter who's in charge?
Yeah, and it might have something to do with the old adage, there's no doubt about the outcome if you spend more than your income. And we are spending money at an incredible burn rate with all the extra money that we spent for COVID, for those emergencies that come forward. And we're in a situation now where we are spending about 76% more money than we bring in taxes. Well, is that sustainable? And now we're going to look at adding on the Christmas tree wish list of government spending, which much of it is, sounds great, but you still have to pay for it. And there's no discussion right now on how in the world you're going to pay for this.
So how do we pay for it, or should we be spending this money?
Well, two quick things. One on what I've been calling them separately, the physical infrastructure and the human infrastructure pieces, which I think, so people out there don't get confused. We're talking about two different measures essentially, and that's what the haggling has really been about within the Democratic caucus recently. But according to the White House, and if you look at the actual tax component of the larger $3.5 trillion human infrastructure plan, that would be at a $0 total to the debt. They're saying that the built-in tax increases on the people making over $400,000 pays for that. Now that's the White House position, but I don't know if they've done a very good job explaining that piece of it to the public.
Congressman, talk again about the Mississippians and their thoughts on the $3.5 trillion bill.
As I said, we're a smart people. We have people that understand, have a lot of common sense, and if there's a 3.5, after the infrastructure bill that they're working on, $3.5 trillion, and the Democrats are saying it's really not going to cost you because we're just going to raise all these taxes and it'll be a net zero. People really don't believe that. Because if you wind up in that situation, you know if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And then what's loaded into that $3.5 trillion, first of all, we don't know. Senator Manchin, Senator Sinema have said they're not going to support $3.5 trillion. So we know if they even get to this, it's not going to be at that level. Manchin has said he won't go over 1.5, and Senator Bernie Sanders, who appears to be the one really driving the progressives in the House that they're close with, is saying, you know, no vote unless we get this one first, and 1.5 in effect is not enough. Well, I mean, you look at the money we're spending, the debt that we're in, you better be able to justify it. Now, with that, I will say there are some things that will be could be very helpful that have some bipartisan support that's not in this, like the Credit for Caring Act, people that have to take care of seniors, senior citizens. That is something that there is an appetite for, I will agree, and there's a way to pay for that and to help those that are providing those services. You know, hundreds of billions of dollars of unpaid time for families trying to take care of their loved ones. And that's something you got to have a discussion on. That's why I supported the RAISE Act a few years ago for that study to be done, and why I certainly support this Credit for Caring Act, which I doubt is even in that $3.5 trillion, because we really don't know what's in it. That's always the great thing about Congress, is let's vote for it, and then we'll, as Speaker Pelosi said, and we'll find out what's in it.
If Democrats can't get it done, what impact does this have on the president and going into 2022, the midterm elections?
So I think there are again two scenarios at play here. First, let's say if the Democrats are able to get this done, let's say they can enact both the physical and the human infrastructure pieces. From my perspective, they're going to have a short period of time to improve their messaging, to be able to go out and say to the public, here's what we actually passed here. And it has, like the Congressman was saying, there's some components of this that the public is going to like, and the Democrats are going to be able to go talk about family and medical leave, that component's there, the prescription drug price reduction through government negotiation that's in there, the universal pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds. Those things are extraordinarily popular. The Democrats need to be able to get back on talking about that piece of it. But if this all crumbles and falls apart, and those popular components of this end up being the pieces that are removed in negotiation, they're going to have to recalibrate what it is they're selling to the public. What are they going to go and say? This is what this is what we're doing. This is what you're paying for. Right now, they can't afford to lose in the course of these ongoing negotiations the pieces that are going to be the most popular among the electorate in the midterm.
Yeah. What impact could it have if they don't get it done?
Well, I think that the impact is already happening right now, and that in this 9 months of the Biden administration, we can talk about a lot of failures by the Biden administration already. But today, Democrats control the House, the Senate, and the White House, and they look totally inept at this point in time. They've been unable to do it, and people are wondering, okay, you're in charge, you have the ability to move forward on these things, and you haven't been able to do that. So the impact will be, historically, the midterms for the White House, for that party not in, the party not in power typically has pretty significant gains in the midterm. I think it's pretty clear at this point, unless something, and I understand it's still a political eternity to November of 22, but I look for the Republicans to take control of the House. Senate is going to be really tight, and we'll see where it goes. But I don't think there's any doubt that the next term of Congress, that Kevin McCarthy will be the Speaker of the House.
You agree with that?
I think it's possible, but again, it is an eternity until that November 2022 election rolls around. But here is where the Democrats still have a bit of an advantage. They are up against an opposition that has not really offered a lot of alternative solutions. So you can't, if they're going to be able to run on the few things they have been able to accomplish in the early stages of the Biden administration, but there's not been an awful lot of alternative proposals that the Republicans are going to be relying on simply the Democrats being unpopular at this point, and they don't necessarily have a coherent message that I'm seeing nationally so far in Washington. But I don't think it's accurate to say, though, that the Biden administration has been disastrous to the point of where that alone is going to cost them control of the Congress. But the historical trends do show that the out party is going to make gains here. And with these numbers being so close already in the House and Senate, that could certainly tip the scales very quickly.
Well, what is the president's window for getting some of his policies done before the midterms?
The window's closing because that campaign time period is going to be coming up very soon. We're going through the redistricting process. We're going to figure out what the district lines look like. Candidates are going to start declaring their intentions for primary and general elections. So that window is going to start to close the deeper we get into this year. But I do want to say that the area, that part where I would not want to be, the reason I would not want to be among the Republican leadership right now is because if they are instrumental in being perceived as killing off some of these very popular things that are included in the Build Back Better bill, the human infrastructure bill.
Say that 3 times.
See that they're going to be the ones who are going to have to face the voters on being perceived as defeating things that the voters are waiting for and have been waiting for a long time. And so the Democrats do have something that they're going to be able to use against the Republicans if they're the ones who are ultimately viewed as being responsible for ensuring that that does not pass.
Byron, I really can't let that go. How you can say it's Republicans' fault on anything when the Democrats control the White House, the House, and the Senate, and they could do all this on their own if they'd stop their infighting. So that's what the people are going to remember. Republicans can just stand back and watch.
But that's the actual problem right now. You've got the President of the United States trying to lead the country back to a place where we're in a better position economically and in so many other ways. And you've got the Democratic Party internally struggling to govern, but you have the Republican Party in Washington that has just decided they don't want to govern, and they've absconded from that for the most part. They're not offering proposals. You saw what Mitch McConnell said last week before this debt ceiling deal was reached. He was just willing to let the government default, and they weren't actually willing to take any action on that. So you've got, right now, the Republican strategy is to do as little as possible, don't upset the apple cart, let the Democrats fail on their own. I don't think that's a very good way to proceed just from a good government perspective, that they seem to be content with letting the Democrats either rise or fall on their own, thus taking the legislative agenda down with it, possibly taking it down with it, when there needs to be this greater cooperation, as we saw in the bipartisan infrastructure bill. In the Senate, you saw some Republicans come forward to actually offer votes, but there are very few of them. There's not enough of them, and you're not seeing that happen on the social spending piece. You're not seeing that happen through Republican leadership rhetorically, through people like Mitch McConnell. On these other issues that the country's facing, the president's out there trying to make things better, repair a very bad situation that he inherited. But here we go with the governing trying to happen from one party, and you see this inter-party squabbling that the Congressman was mentioning has kind of hampered their ability to do that.
But I would just say one thing. The Republicans, because they're the party in the minority, don't have the power to take down any legislation. If there's failure on the legislation, it is totally the Democrats' failure on this. And in the past, when there has been some bipartisan support on the debt ceiling, it's because the party in power has gone to the party in the minority and worked that out. And there's been no real approach to try to work that out with the Republicans.
Let's talk about Afghanistan and the president's handling of Afghanistan. Your thoughts on the pullout of Afghanistan and how the president responded to the pullout?
Byron, I'm certainly very disturbed by the testimony that occurred in a recent hearing in the Senate with General Milley, Secretary of Defense Austin, and then General McKenzie, CENTCOM leader. And they all said that they had told the White House to leave some troops to make the transition smoother. They should have held on to the air base that they had that was a really secure facility, and that didn't happen. So it tells you that it looks like the State Department, not the Pentagon, was kind of calling the shots on some of this. It remains to be seen where that is. But the thing that concerns me is if you go back to the president being on TV with George Stephanopoulos, and he was asked, did anybody tell you that you needed to leave troops? And he said, no, not that I recall. Well, that's disturbing on 2 points, neither one of which is a good answer. Either I don't recall or I'm not telling the truth. Neither one of those are good for the president in that situation. It was a horrific withdrawal, and you knew that when that vacuum occurred, that this would happen. I think most Americans wanted to get out of Afghanistan, but there was a cleaner way to do it after assurances that Americans that were there would be safely removed, and those that helped us too. Their lives are in great danger, and we still have Americans over there, and people that were interpreters or people that helped us with information that are still in danger. So it was just a total embarrassment for our country to do that. And only one person is in jail over this, and that's the person that criticized the withdrawal. So it is it's a mess, and our military's got to be strong, and it looks like their advice was ignored.
Yeah, the Biden administration has been saying that they've had a kind of a weak hand to play because of the negotiations under the Trump administration. Do you agree that they were in a weaker position? Those were the same negotiations of the Trump administration on the Paris Accord, on other things that he just says, to heck with that, and he goes on his own way. He's not bound by what the previous administration did or said. And to blame President Trump on what happened, on their failure to lead in that situation, it tells you how weak, unfortunately, the president is right now. Your thoughts?
Well, I would say the president's far from weak here. At the end of the day, when the political dust settles and the political smoke clears here, what is going to be the end result here? Joe Biden is the president who ended a very unpopular war that lasted for 20 years. About 70% of the American voters said they wanted us to get out of. Now, short term, they're going to be taking these hits, right? Because I agree with the congressman. There were a large number of things, such as the evacuation planning that was very poorly done. There were ultimately the president's decision. It was this president, not the previous president's decision. The buck stops here, right, at the Oval Office. But I think what the big picture, when we take a step back from this further off in time, is going to be, what did he do here? He ended an unpopular war. But I also want to say, from a policy perspective, I think that was the wrong move. I would have not done that. And I think it was probably a net negative for the United States in terms of our overall foreign and defense policy positions. But I think politically, it will eventually be calculated out to be a win for the president, ending a very unpopular war. People are going to be, whether people agree that this is a good thing or not, they're not going to look at all of the details at the end of the day. The public is going to look at, are we still there? Are we still fighting this war? That answer is no. And I think it's a win for him in the end.
There's a lot of questions about whether we're safer or not safer with us out of Afghanistan. Do you believe that we're in a safer position or not in a safer position?
Well, look, I think it's given another safe haven for terrorists to operate from. You cannot combat this with the over-the-horizon approach where you send a missile in and it kills, civilians, or the fact that we lost 13 American soldiers for an attack in there. So. And when we looked, I mean, the videos of what happened and the people trying to get out, it makes us look weaker than we are. And it sends the wrong message to communist China. We're dealing with right now with free and democratic Taiwan that is certainly bullied by communist China every day. So we have to send a stronger message. I am pleased to see where we're visiting with and working with the other countries to kind of create that with India, Australia, United Kingdom, and America. Those are things that are positive and good that I think but we're having to do that to make up for the failure that, I think we'd all agree, even a mom with 3 kids having to get him dressed and get them off to school could have probably done a better job of organizing that withdrawal. It was, this was not good for the country, and we'll see what plays out, short term and long term. I think it sends a wrong message to our allies and potential allies that we're not going to be there at the end of the day. We can bail on you. And so it was not done well.
Yeah, and I agree. I just want to add one thing, though. I don't disagree with that piece of this at all, but I look at this from the long-term strategic perspective of what is the United States, what is our role in the world, what is our role in that region. I have long been and continue to be and plan to continue for indefinitely in the future being a supporter of the need to export democratic values and norms to other parts of the world. That was our half of the mission in Afghanistan. It was to transform a terrorist safe haven and make the world a safer place, but also to instill democratic values and make that region more stable. I think, unfortunately, we failed to do the second piece of that. And I think it's not so much a partisan thing at all as it is just a failure to communicate what it is that we as the United States are holding up as our values in that region. And to me, the abandonment of the promotion of democratic ideals and values in the country and in the region is going to be that is the long-term failure for us. Thank you.
Congressman Gregg Harper, Dr. Nathan Shrader, thank you for always a pleasure talking with you both.
Absolutely. Great to be with Dr. Shrader and you, Byron. Thank you.
And we'll be right back. Big thanks to Gregg Harper and Nathan Shrader for joining us this week. We'll be back next weekend with more of the political and current affairs coverage that you demand. I'm Byron Brown from all of us here at 12 News. Make it a great weekend.